Did you know that over 65% of Wi-Fi routers used in the United States are made by one brand? That brand is TP-Link. Turns out TP-Link also a Chinese company. I'm recording this video the week that one of the biggest news stories right now is about the TikTok ban. We are at like the height of the cybersecurity Cold War between the US and China. Under the pretenses of national security, pretty much any Chinese technology company being used in the United States is under a microscope. For good reason. There are heavily funded hacking groups by the Chinese government that are constantly breaking in to United States companies. A lot of hacking that I talk about and that we're protecting against in our day jobs in cybersecurity are financially motivated. Things like ransomware or other malware campaigns that are stealing credentials or cryptocurrency or something like that. The difference with all these Chinese hacking groups is that they are not financially motivated. They're very patient, they're very talented, they're very well funded. And their goal is espionage. They're stealing information. Or their goal is other political motivation, things like disruption. We're seeing disruptions in power grids in places. We're also just seeing like flexing. Hey, we can look what we can do. That brings us back to TP-Link. So apparently the US is currently considering a ban on all TP-Link hardware, which, as I said at the beginning of the video, is about 65% of routers being used in the US today, at least in what's called the SOHO market, small office, home office, basically the stuff that you can buy off the shelf. So since I read this story last week, I've been trying to figure out, is this just like a fear campaign or is there anything actually here? Is there anything that we should actually be worried about? So right off the bat, the White House has announced this possibility of this US ban. And the buckets of evidence are basically twofold. There's some technological concerns and suspicions, and then there's economic concerns and suspicions. Let's break into both. So a lot of this is stemming from a Wall Street Journal report, but they're also pointing to a bunch of research that's been done in the last year by Microsoft's security team into these Chinese hacking groups like Salt Typhoon, Volt Typhoon. The Typhoon analysis is a whole nother video. So let's start with the technological suspicions. I absolutely love this quote. This is kind of a roast. TP-Link's unusual degree of vulnerabilities. They're basically saying, holy crap, there is constantly vulnerabilities published in TP-Link routers. So much so that it's causing to question whether or not they're there on purpose. There's also some concerns. Again, this is pointing to the similar concerns of things going on with TikTok right now about the companies that are based in China's requirement to comply with the government of China's laws. Basically saying, hey, if the government called TP-Link and asked for some information or for them to put a backdoor somewhere, are they required to comply with that? The other bit of the technological suspicions is that those Typhoon hacking groups that I talked about that are based out of China, one of their favorite target is these SOHO routers. They've conducted some massive hacking campaigns over the last few years, and SOHO routers are one of their absolute favorite targets. Basically any edge device that's internet facing that might be slow to get some firmware updates. We're seeing things also like VPNs or firewalls. Ivanti and Fortinet are having a bad time right now playing whack-a-mole against actively exploited 0 days. But if SOHO routers are their favorite target and TP-Link owns 65% of the SOHO router market, you can see where the dots are being connected that compromised TP-Link devices are huge parts of Chinese hacking campaigns. And the fact that TP-Link is a Chinese company is asking some questions about whether or not these vulnerabilities are there to aid these hacking campaigns by the Chinese government. Moving away from SOHO router devices, TP-Link is one of the most prominent router device manufacturers, period, not just in your home that you bought off the shelf at Best Buy or off of Amazon. There's national security concerns. TP-Link products are all over government networks, like US military bases, Army and Air Force exchange, Navy exchange, etc. One of the fairest pieces of criticism in this whole thing for me is that TP-Link routers are routinely shipped to customers with security flaws. I think this is a really good point to bring up, right? Because up until now, I think you could just say, hey, is this just a punching bag on a security company that has a whole lot of different hardware devices and different firmware operating systems? And it's really hard to just wave a magic wand and have a secure software development lifecycle and an update lifecycle and have your customers actually download those updates and restart the firmware and all this kind of stuff. So I could pause and say, hey, are we just punching on a company that's having a hard time with that whole process? But this point stands out to me. They are shipping devices to customers with security flaws pre-baked into them. This makes sense. You write some code in some firmware, you load it onto a device, you ship it off to an Amazon warehouse where it sits for some undetermined amount of time. And in that time, vulnerabilities are discovered in that code that you shipped out on that piece of hardware that's sitting in a box in a warehouse that you, even if you wanted to, have no control over updating it. But I think there's like a right way that you could do this. There are other router companies out there that are doing interesting things about not letting their customers use out-of-date pieces of hardware, auto-updating firmware without the customer having to go and log into their admin portal and download firmware. People that are buying off-the-shelf Wi-Fi routers, what percentage of them do you think even know how to get into that admin portal and would even bother looking at firmware updates or anything like that? This is where a lot of, I think, the fair criticism lies in everything. I understand vulnerabilities happen. I understand security is hard, especially if you have such a diverse fleet of hardware and software. Super difficult. Obviously, TP-Link spokespeople are coming out and saying this is a smear campaign. Hey, everyone be scared of China campaign, not actually something that, they're doing or something that people should be scared of. And they say they welcome any opportunity to engage with the US government to demonstrate that their security practices are fully in line with industry security standards. That's a whole other bag of worms if they are in line with industry security standards and shipping thousands of products with security vulnerabilities out of the box. Are the industry security standards good enough? All right, that's some of the tech suspicions. And I'm not seeing any evidence of, hey, we analyzed this device, this vulnerability was planted there or left purposefully or anything like that. We're not seeing any public research about that. Obviously, this is more stuff coming out of politicians or watch groups or anything like that. I think the criticism is valid. I think the concern is valid, but I'm not seeing any strong evidence of like on purpose vulnerabilities. Zooming out for a second, this isn't the first time that we've seen a Chinese networking giant be under the microscope or forced out of the US market. Huawei comes to mind as an obvious one. They were at the tip of the spear when we were pushing out new technology to the cell market, and Huawei was forced to not take part of that, especially with the 5G rollouts going out across the country. That ban is still in place to this day. There is no Huawei hardware out there in the broader US networking. The Huawei fears are very similar to the fears that we're seeing here. The other bucket of criticism I find interesting, besides technological, is economic. Right? So looking in at the pricing models of TP-Link and how they've been able to capture 65% of the market is obviously with pricing pressure. Your average consumer is going to go on to Amazon or they're going to go down to their local electronics store and they're going to compare prices based on some high-level features of like speed or anything else that they can maybe compare without like deep understanding of the tech that's like underlying of a Wi-Fi router. So I think probably the biggest one for most consumers is going to be price, hence the 65% market share. But looking into it with the reporting is saying that TP-Link is selling these devices at a loss. So reading this quote from the Wall Street Journal article directly, the Justice Department is investigating whether the price discrepancies violate a federal law that prohibits attempts at monopolies by selling products for less than they cost to make. This is another interesting point to me. Why would you sell a router for less than it costs to make? Unless there was maybe some government incentives allowing you to do that. It would also make sense to me if there was like some sort of upsell, right? Like you get the hardware into someone's house and then you sell them like some service as part of their Wi-Fi router. I've seen some routers sell like ad blocking or enhanced security features or whatever it is, and they have like a SaaS. So maybe they can cut the margins on the hardware and make money on the long tail of that customer not replacing their Wi-Fi router that often, and they pay some subscription to the device. I'm not aware of TP-Link doing a whole lot of that long tail SaaS subscription model. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a super engaged TP-Link customer myself. Another interesting development here is that I think TP-Link read the tea leaves on this one, and just a few weeks before a lot of these announcements started to come out, so I'm guessing they were feeling the heat on the back end that we didn't see, they made sure to try to distance themselves from the Chinese government by establishing their global headquarters in the US. Obviously, this might not have anything to do with what I'm talking about. I can't verify that. They're not saying that. They're not saying, hey, look at us. We're in California. Don't be scared about the whole China thing. But fairly interesting to me that a company that's been around for like over 20 years is all of a sudden making this move to solidify its presence in the US, merge some of their parent companies, TP-Link Global, TP-Link USA, and locating that in China with a dual headquarters in Singapore. They're saying things like, this relocation of our global headquarters is a pivotal moment in our history, reinforcing our commitment to the US market and enhancing our ability to innovate and compete on a global scale. We love innovation. Again, the timing would be a bit strange to me if you were saying a lot of these press release type things around the same time that you were about to maybe get banned from the US, saying things like, we're making a long-term commitment to the American consumers and businesses, expanding our presence here, blah, 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 blah. My initial thoughts on this one was it was a little bit more scare tactic than like legitimate concern. But the more I look into it, I really do understand the suspicions. Painting the picture a little bit clearer on context, just earlier this year, the FBI director, Christopher Wray, came out and mentioned that they have evidence of Chinese hackers already compromising a ton of this edge device internet infrastructure, things like these Soho routers, and that they're not doing anything with the access. They've hacked them and they're lying in wait, saying things like they've put themselves in a position to attack at the right moment. This testimony by Director Wray made my spidey senses tingle. We haven't seen a whole lot of evidence since then, except for some of the research coming out of Microsoft about some of these botnets on Soho routers. We've also seen examples of China running similar looking campaigns in other countries that are maybe less positioned to respond or defend themselves or react in any sort of way. Places like Guam and Taiwan have had power system disruptions or other national security concerns based on campaigns that look kind of identical to the ones that we're talking about here. So I'm not sure that if I had a TP-Link router in my house right now, if I'd be running to unplug it and replace it. I don't know if we're quite there yet on the level of suspicion. I'll leave that up to you based on everything I just presented. Another concern is a lot of people aren't in the position to replace whatever hardware their ISP gives them. And a lot of times that's TP-Link. If you're stuck with one internet service provider in your area, like a lot of people are, I know I have been, and you're like using Comcast or whatever it is, they might come and install their modem router combo or like a modem and a router, and you don't have a whole lot of say over that. Sometimes you can go buy your own hardware, your own modem, your own thing, and use it, and they'll let you use it with their account, and they won't charge you like a rental fee, and that's like a easy way to save a few bucks and control your hardware a little bit more. But a lot of people don't necessarily have the know-how, desire, or anything to do that, and they might be locked in, especially if they need things like customer support, and they're going to call their internet service provider who's going to remote into their hardware in their house. Maybe that kind of stuff isn't available if you replace the stuff that they gave you, which might be TP-Link hardware, and bring in something new. I'm really interested what you guys think about this one. Do you think this is more US-China Cold War scare tactics and maybe a nothing burger on the technology side? Or do you think this is a legitimate concern and we should probably be acting a little bit faster to rip out a lot of this technology that's ingrained in well over half of US networks? I wrote about this story on vulnu.com when it broke a few weeks ago, so go check that out if you want links to a lot of the reports and sources that I talked about in today's video. While you're there, don't forget to subscribe to the free weekly newsletter that comes out every Friday morning, Vulnerable You. And please help me get this YouTube thing off the ground and like and subscribe and share and all that kind of good stuff down below. Thanks for being here. Follow for more cybersecurity news.